Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Gooner Talk podcast series. Of course, where we get the thoughts of some of the podcast boys and round up the week's events and thoughts. And I mean, this week, again, taking a victory. And we're going to talk a little bit about our perspective and opinions and how we might look upon Arsenal this week, especially concerning the fact that we're currently sitting third in the table when a lot of people would like to see still a bit of change going on at the club. But don't worry, we're going to get into all that. We're going to get into your thoughts in our live chat box as well. Thank you ever so much, everyone that's tuned in this evening. But we've also got a debutant on too, which is going to hopefully be good fun. But returning face, as always, welcoming back. John, how you doing, mate?
Good. Thanks for having me on again. How are you?
I'm good, mate. Well, I mean, I was telling you beforehand, I kind of got a parking ticket.
Yeah, besides that.
Besides that, I'm fine. But that sort of has taken an edge to my evening, it's fair to say. Good to have you on board, as always.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here.
And some of you may have seen a tweet that I put out today. If you don't follow us on Twitter, at the Gooner Talk TV. Basically saying that I want to try and get a few more new faces on the show, and there's been quite a lot of people that have been sending in their videos and trying to say basically what they can do and how good they are. And I wanted to say just before I introduce our second guest is that the reason why, because a few people did tweet me saying that why do we have to send in a video, is purely down to the fact that I like to see the audio and quality of the content, because we've had people on in the past where it hasn't been so great, and so that's the only reason. But keep sending the tweets in, keep DMing me if you'd like to come on the show, send in that little video of your preview or the reaction to the Bournemouth game, and hopefully I'll be in touch with you guys and get you on one of these podcasts or on another show. But I am going to introduce our first debutant, who isn't through because, well, not because he sent a video, but because our good friend Graham Brooks highly recommends him. So no pressure, Mike, but Graham Brooks does say you're the man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good, mate. Again, other than the money going out of my account, I'm fine. So
sorry about that.
It's fine. It's absolutely fine. I mean, I'll get over it at the end of the day. But thank you ever so much, everyone that's tuning in to the chat this evening. I know it's a bit of a late one, but we had a bit of a technical hitch. Basically, me not being as organised as I usually should be. But we're going to jump straight into things. Mike, I'm going to start with you, pal. Just give me your 2-minute breakdown of the weekend's game.
Well, gosh, it was started well. I think everyone's been wanting Arsenal to start well, start with intensity, especially at home, get the crowd behind them. So I was impressed. I was excited. The press seemed to be something that they worked on in practice. That would be a guess, just looking at the fact that it was more coordinated. I think in the past it's been a bit of a solo effort, one man at a time, just trying to figure it out. So I was impressed with that. Of course, the goal early, many half chances, but little concerned that they weren't creating much more than just half chances with so much dominant possession. And then, of course, second half, golly gosh, we are not even close to putting in two good halves this season. And that's my main concern for this team. And I know you don't want to, we'll talk about that later, but that second half was just a monstrosity, wasn't it? I mean, it was, I've never seen the players this season give the ball away quite as much. And, but I think that the halftime team talk, I think, had an effect on those guys in a negative way, and the whole idea to sit and protect. I'm not so sure that these players are wanting to do what their coaches wanted them to do, and that's sort of the conclusion I've come to. But a game of two halves, no doubt about it. Thrilled with the beginning, always positives, but the thing as a whole is still a bit of a mess, Tom.
Yeah, it's weird, obviously, talking about the negatives when we are third, but there are plenty of issues in this team. And I said the other week, I was like, if we do achieve top four, I think it's going to be more down to the fact that our rivals are going to be dropping points and allowing us to achieve that, rather than us really taking this league by the scruff of the neck and grabbing that all-important Champions League qualification spot. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But John, it was a game in which, I mean, Bournemouth at home is usually one of those games where we don't seem to struggle too much. It's the Vitality Stadium fixture where we do sometimes have a bit of a step. I remember going 3-0 down and having to drag it back to 3-0, where Olivier Giroud's celebration annoying Alexis Sanchez a couple of seasons ago. But actually at home against Bournemouth, we usually do all right. How would you evaluate our performance, though, on Sunday?
Yeah, I think it was summed up pretty well. I think it's a problem that we've had a lot this season in terms of coming out and playing a consistent game pattern from the beginning to the end. And I mentioned it on the match preview that Eddie Howe even came out and said, look, this Bournemouth side, we know that there's a deficiency in their tactics and their game plan going forward, specifically in the area of conceding a goal too early. They've done it a lot this season. So I knew that what we had to do, and one of the things that I think was highlighted was getting a goal in early, which I thought we did successfully. Unfortunately, once we did that, I felt we took the hand off the brake a lot, or off the gas rather. And I think that was a situation where we kind of, maybe against the better opposition, would have put ourselves in a little bit more danger. Luckily, I think Bournemouth were fairly awful. You know, no offense to Bournemouth, but they did not offer much of a threat, and they haven't really when they come to when they come to the Emirates. And I even tweeted out and I said, like, Bournemouth fans hate coming to the Emirates to play us. It's just a miserable place. They usually come not expecting anything. Even if they play well, we end up getting a result, and it's usually pretty emphatic. So I knew going into this game that we needed to come out. We needed to score an early goal against them. I think it would have put them psychologically in a similar or exact position that they've been in plenty of times this season. One goal down, having to fight their way back, and I think that was good. If that was the tactic, I mean, it worked. You know, at the end of the day, you got 3 points out of it. It wasn't the greatest game of football on both sides, though, and I think, you know, going forward, I think a lot of the fans, myself included, would like to see a little bit more of a good game of football, really, at the end of the day. And I don't think we really saw that, but we got the 3 points at the end of the day.
Let's talk about the lineup and what we decided to go with. I think that after the game, obviously in midweek against Liège, Mike, there was a case that a lot of people would have liked to see Kieran Tierney start the game, and possibly even Rob Holding. He's persisted with the experienced two centre-backs in the heart of that defence, and also with Callum Chambers deputising at right back whilst Ainsley Maitland-Niles was in the squad. But after that red card, he's sort of been superseded by the Englishman's performances, and Kolasinac kept his place at left back. Were you happy with the decision he made, and can you understand why he made those choices?
Well, I was a little put out. I don't know if it's the right way of saying it, but I was a bit put out that Tierney played 90 minutes on Thursday. I felt that we could have used Tierney yesterday if he didn't play 90 minutes on Thursday. I didn't think that was necessary. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was fun watching him play. It was quite something, actually. But and Kolasinac, I thought, defended better than he normally does. Normally his problem is defending, and he excels going forward on occasion. So I thought that was a bit bizarre. The Chambers thing, I'm all for that. Bellerin on Thursday looked very rusty. He was about the only player that didn't have a good game. And he wasn't bad, but he gave the ball away infrequently. Holding, I think that Emery's trying to get the timing right of when to depart Socrates. And I'm okay with Socrates and Luiz for right now, but I think in a very short period of time, Holding will nudge him out. The concern for me was the midfield, and then that showed to be itself in the second half. But on Thursday, we had a destroyer, Tom, in Torreira. We had the controller in Ceballos, and we had an accelerator in Willock, which I think is how you make a three-man midfield. And we didn't have that. And so there were large gaps because Willock wasn't playing, or there was nobody accelerating into that gaping hole between the lines. Of course, Xhaka was just Xhaka, and so I was disappointed in the midfield and up front. I was quite happy with Martinelli, quite honestly, to start in front of Pepe. I think Pepe might need to just be sat down, not dropped per se, but just sat down just to take a bit of the pressure off, maybe. And so I was excited for Martinelli because he was on fire to start, but that didn't happen. That was okay. That's okay.
We'll definitely get on to Martinelli a bit later, but in terms of the defence, it's interesting you say about how he's sort of beginning the process of possibly phasing out Socrates, and I think it's a process that needs to happen because he spoke in the post-match press conference about his sort of plans for Holding and how we're going to integrate him into the team. But I think of the two, Socrates for me is the one who would get replaced by Rob Holding, but we'll have to see what happens moving forwards. Obviously, the other defender, John, in that back to David Luiz, is the guy that got the goal for us. And it was I said it in our chat, it was a very David Luiz goal. And it was. When I thought back on that, I was like, him getting up for a header, seeing that hair flopping about 7-8 foot in the air, and winning a header is very David Luiz-like, other than obviously seeing a free kick time go in the top bin. But how important is David Luiz? He was asked, Emery, in the press conference, how important is he to the dressing room? I think he's had a really strong impact, and Chambers talked a bit about that as well, and Holding talked about that message that he got after he got his injury last season. How important is David Luiz to this team, and do you think some of his mistakes are maybe overreacted to a bit?
Well, look, I think that we're in a position as fans where we're really struggling to deal with a back line that's consistent, and like it's been a long time since we've been able to point to an Arsenal back line and be, this is we're very comfortable with this. So I think in terms of when you're looking at the criticism of David Luiz or Socrates or any of Arsenal's defenders, really, I think it needs to be taken in context with kind of this overall frustration that most fans, I believe, myself included, have had regarding this back line in general and how Arsenal defend as a unit. I think that's been a big criticism of this team in the past, and I think that that's no different right now. I think that we're putting a lot of hope in Holding to come back and short things out, and signs early on look good, and it's very promising. We have Saliba coming back later on, but look, at the end of the day, you got to look at what team are you playing, what will give you the best chance of keeping a clean sheet, and there's going to be mistakes here and there. We know that's in David Luiz's game. We know that this kind of a goal from set pieces is something that's a bit of a strength of his. He's a tall guy. He's an athletic guy. He's very, very. He has a lot of experience in the Premier League. I think that when you look at the Premier League specifically compared to other leagues in Europe, I think that the importance of set piece and being a prolific set piece scorer is important, more so in this league than a lot of other ones. And I think that gives us a little bit of an edge. I don't think Socrates is really that kind of a player. I think that when you look at the side and you're going, well, where are our goals from set pieces going to come from? Holding can do it. We've seen him do it. Monreal used to do it. We've seen him do it. Giroud used to be that guy, but he's gone now. So you really got to say, look, and by the way, I noticed we don't take as many set pieces directly into the box anymore, especially from like a corner. We do these short corners, and I mentioned it before. I do not like short corners, especially with this Arsenal team. I think that a lot of goals can be had from just winging it in the box and having players like David Luiz.
Do you think it's done because we sort of struggled to hit over the first man so often?
I 100% think that's what it is, and I also think it's just that this is not a tactic that Emery likes to employ. He likes to play into goals, and I don't think he likes to just kind of. That's the sense I get, at least, and that goes with his tactics of playing from the back. I think he likes to play up from the back into the pitch and not just hoof a ball in and get a goal, even though I think that needs to be worked on a lot. I don't like seeing us taking as many short corners. I'd like to see us throw the ball in the box a little bit more and just work on getting that ball over the first man. I mean, we have the technical ability in players, Ceballos, Pepe. These players can beat the first man. We saw it against Bournemouth. So I think they really need to work on that. And I think that, if you look at the last couple seasons, we've actually been fairly dangerous on set pieces leading up to Wenger eventually ultimately leaving and Emery coming and taking over. So I think that's something that needs to get worked on. I think Luiz offers a threat in the box in that regard, and I agree with both of you. I think that we're starting to see a little bit of a phase out of Socrates in that regard, because I don't think he provides as much as Luiz, especially from that attacking perspective and a buildup of the play from playing out the back. He offers a whole new outlet of the ball that we just don't see in otherwise.
Yeah, I genuinely think that whilst he has the mistake in him, and I mean, if there's one thing that we know about Arsenal defenders, usually they do have a mistake in them, and it's that point where we really start developing a player or bringing a player like a Virgil van Dijk-esque sort of signing to really change things at the back. That experience is something that we need to work off, and especially the influence that on our younger players. And David Luiz, whilst he makes a couple of errors and he can be out of position sometimes, the experience that he does have, the fact he's won so many trophies at a prolific level, is invaluable to those younger players. The influence on those young players is going to be key. So yeah, I take your point on board, especially at corners. He is a threat too, and his passing out the back as well is a completely dynamic that we've had in a very long time. The amount of times he was pinging balls over the top to the wide players, put Aubameyang in at Manchester United. There was one he was down the wing where he nearly scored from that chance. So there is a different side to that game that maybe we are gaining from having him in the team. Moving sort of forward to the midfield, a couple of comments, and Mike, you spoke about the fact that you really like the dynamic of the game on Thursday and how we played with that midfield, and very, very different to how we played in the league games. I see what he's trying to do by having Xhaka at the base and then having Guendouzi, who is obviously undroppable with his form right now. But for me, I just don't see enough creativity to really sort of dominate games. While we can have a lot of possession in a home fixture, for me, that midfield doesn't create enough chances. Is that the only issue with that midfield, or is there more?
Well, I think that you got a lot of different pieces there. I think when Danny Ceballos plays, to me, I think he has this instinct to want to touch the ball. So he comes close if you watch him, and he wants to play quickly, and he wants to play often and touch it often. And quite honestly, if that's the midfield, Xhaka, Guendouzi and Ceballos, that's not really working for Arsenal, because we would need Danny Ceballos or Joe Willock or whoever it may be, Lacazette maybe checking into that between the lines, whoever that may be. We need them to be a little more patient and wait. And we need Xhaka and Guendouzi to play the ball between themselves, and then Ceballos to wait between the lines rather than always come to the ball. Because what you've got is you've got three guys that can keep the ball, but then there's no penetration, and then there's the hole. So Danny Ceballos is, to me, one of the best young midfielders in Europe. And as long as he's coachable and as long as Emery is telling him the right things, I think this is very fixable, because he's a wonderful player. But I think he needs to do far more work closer to goal for the benefit of the team and not his own desire to touch the ball. And then Willock, it's hard to not play Willock. I mean, we have 4 of our 5 midfielders who I think are waving their hands in the air saying, pick me. And it's hard not to play him, because the other thing that I didn't mention, Tom, earlier, was that if you look at that starting lineup, apart from Aubameyang, where were the goals? Saka's not produced goals yet. That's not his fault. And Pepe hasn't. And Ceballos hasn't. And, of course, Guendouzi and Xhaka haven't. So is it any wonder that we won through a David Luiz header and didn't really create many other chances? And again, these are good players, but you have to, when you pick a team, you have to put goals in the team. And Willock is a threat, and he scores, I think, probably average 1 every 2 games in the few that he's played. Martinelli scored recently as well, so there was a lack there too.
There definitely was. When we obviously talk about Ceballos, there's always that sort of slight edge to the conversation, because he's really still not our player. And at the end of the season, seeing him leave, for me, is going to be painful, because people know my affiliation to La Liga, and seeing Spanish players come through at Arsenal is always a delight. And losing Santi Cazorla was painful, and maybe seeing Ceballos go back to Madrid will be as equally painful. Maybe not as equally painful, but certainly painful. Maybe we can sort something out in the summer. But I think that there's going to be a point with Ceballos. I know I'm going off on a slight tangent here, but if there's a point with Ceballos that if we get towards the end of the season and sort of a deal has not been agreed in principle, maybe that Real Madrid, that we will sign him in the summer, for me, Willock has to become a priority for us, because while Ceballos will bring us a lot, I think that there becomes a time where you do need to start prioritising, even in the long term. Yes, you can use Ceballos for his creativity, and trust me, this is no slight on the player at all. It's just thinking about Arsenal in the long term. I don't know if either of you have anything you want to raise on that point, but it's just for me, when you have someone on loan and you know that they've got a hell of a lot of quality and there's a high chance they might leave, is there an argument to say that you start towards the end of that loan phasing them out so that you can have the transition without them in the team, a much easier process next time, or is that complete rubbish?
I can jump in on that. I don't think it's rubbish. I think that there's a valid concern there, especially when you consider, look, we've been in dangerous situations where we've lost players on a free transfer and we just did not have an adequate replacement, or we relied too heavily on him. You could look at Alexis Sanchez, you could look at Ramsey, whatever. Luckily, I think we were able to replace Ramsey. I don't want to say replace him, but we added Ceballos, which I think covers a certain area of the pitch that Ramsey liked to occupy a lot. So I think that there's some merit to the notion that you need to have something set up. At the same time, though, I don't think that that's how we're going to approach this. I think we're going to get as much as we possibly can out of this player while he's here. And I think that that's probably the best way to go about it, just because I think that the entire kind of aura around this team right now is a very pragmatic approach to both the league and what we have going on in the corollary cup competitions and things like that. So I think that when you're looking at that kind of a pragmatic approach, it's really about what can you get out of this player? How can he benefit the team while he's here? And if he can, maybe, you keep him in. That being said, I feel like if you think about Ramsey, for example, we used him up until he got injured, maybe a little too much. And then that was at the end of the season when we lost Ramsey and that our form started to dip. And that was one of the contributing factors, I would say, to why we missed out on the top 4. I mean, maybe some tactical selections and things like that, but missing Ramsey at the end of the season was a big part of that. And I think that if we just started phasing out Ceballos at the end, given that he's healthy and in good form, I don't think that that's a really good approach to take in that regard if we're trying to make that top 4 and have a good run in the European competitions.
Yeah, Mike, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I agree with John. I don't think, unless Ceballos' form drops off considerably and he's not really of any use to us, I don't see any point. I mean, he's playing I prefer watching the clips of him when he's on the bench than on the field, because that guy's got some passion, and he's only been in 5 minutes, hasn't he? And so that tells a lot about that. This guy, he wants to play, and he's into the club. Of course, you've got to. On the human level, the fact that he, after 2 games got a chance of his own, that other players who've been there a lot longer, that's a big deal to a player. And so I think that Arsenal need to do everything they can to keep him. I just hope that they can get the best out of him, because right now I'm seeing, 70%, and I just think he's a wonderful player, but I think he needs to be either play as the double pivot with maybe Guendouzi or Torreira or whoever it may be, and touch the ball more often, which is his inclination, or he needs to be coached to stay a little higher, because if you think about the second half, Tom, we were going short, long, and that's why we were losing the ball. There was no connector there, because he was always too close, and then there was nobody between the lines. So I don't want to be a scratch record, but yeah, Denis Ceballos is somebody that I would love to see stay at Arsenal Football Club.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed we can sort something out. If we like him, maybe the club will push for it. We're just going to have to wait and see. John,
yes,
moving towards the front line. Bukayo Saka had a fantastic game against Manchester United. Definitely one of the standout players on the pitch. We'll come on to his colleague on the other side in a little bit. But sticking with the young Englishman, I think that it's really hard to balance these type of players, because you look at Pepe and he's really our only out and out experienced 24 winger at the club. There isn't. You've got Martinelli, Nelson, and Saka, and they're still very young and raw and inexperienced players. And after we sold Mkhitaryan and Iwobi, we sort of really dialed back our wide options. So this is a really difficult scenario until, we hope Lacazette is back after the break. But how do you manage a situation where you've got an 18-year-old player who's shown some real potential, performing really, really well, and how do you manage him in a team where you know that we need him while we've got injuries, and yet not burn him out?
I mean, that's an excellent question. And then here's another, just to add a little bit on top of that. Let's say Lacazette comes back now. How do you drop a player like that to put in a player like Aubameyang over there on the left and Pepe on the right? So it's a very difficult balance that needs to be.
You arguably drop Pepe and you put Aubameyang
or maybe Martinelli.
Yeah, possibly.
I mean, I think that he could play there. I think that, he's got the quality to play there. But yeah, it becomes a whole very complicated issue, which is why, remember, I said it's not a question of when Pepe will come back or if Pepe will come back. It's when, because he needs to start doing it now. And I think, listen, I think these young players are seeing that. I think they're seeing him struggle, and good. I think everyone wants the team to succeed, but at the same time, they're taking their chances, and they realize, look, there's some players that are underperforming a little bit for whatever reason, and I'm sure we'll get into it later. But they're really, really taking these games by the scruff and standing out, and in an immense way that is way beyond what you would think that these players were capable of the start of last season going into this season. So it's really good, and that's coming from me, who hasn't really been watching the youth players as much in the under 21 performances and stuff like that. So this might not be coming to a shock of a lot of people who've been watching them come up. We know that these players are rated highly in the youth academies, but actually seeing that translating into the Premier League and to cup competitions like Europa is amazing. And I think that we got a really exciting crop of young players. I mentioned it before. We could say whatever we want about this season in terms of our performances and how we're doing right now, whether Emery should stay or go. But one thing that's been a shining breath of fresh air this season has been these youth players coming through the first team and knocking down the door. And I think that that's just going to get better and better and better. And it seems like there's this different mentality that these youth players have than we've seen in the past at Arsenal. And I think that's only going to help us one way or another in the long run.
Before we come on to the main feature, which is, of course, talking a little bit about the manager, Mike, you wrote a recent article for Gunners Town on the reaction to the Bournemouth game. And you said, I'm not sure if Pepe is playing for the Ivory Coast during the international break, which I can now tell you that he is. But I'd be tempted to claim a fractured eyebrow or just something to keep him at Colney and work on his choices. He needs to not always want the ball to his feet. Alba was breaking clear and Pepe had an easy opportunity to run in behind for a one-on-one, but he didn't. Do you think the fact that he's so desperate to sort of show what he's about means that he is ultimately holding on for the ball for too long and not making some of those passes that maybe when he was at Lille, when he was very confident, he may have done?
Yeah, I think he's trying too hard, but I don't think he's helping himself, Tom. I think if you watch him, he always runs up the wing, stops, checks back, and wants the ball to his feet. And then when he gets it, he's having to, because he's wanting to come inside and there's no number 10 in there, there's no one to connect with. If Lacazette, if and when he comes back, there's somebody to link with there, so maybe that will help. He doesn't have Bellerin running around the outside. That's not helping. But the biggest problem that Pepe's got is he makes his life too difficult. There's been so many times, and if you guys remember against Bournemouth, in the first half, Aubameyang went on a breakaway. I'd say it was a 3-on-4, 3-on-3. And he was wanting Pepe to go behind the defence, and there was space behind the defence, and he wouldn't do it. He was just holding back. And so Aubameyang finally gave him the ball. And then because Pepe moves laterally, any time you move laterally, the ball moves out laterally, or you move laterally, that gives defenders time to come back and get in their shape. So Pepe, rather than being one-on-one with the goalkeeper or just to slot it across, now had a more complicated situation that he's made for himself. So I think that's coaching. The coaches need to show him the times when he needs to come and get it to his feet, the times when he should go outside, but more than that, the times where he needs to run behind and make his life so much easier.
100%. I can't disagree with any of it. I think that the area that Pepe's game, we know that Pepe's game, as you said, he moves laterally. Now, I don't want to lose that essence of his game because it was very key to the reason why he was one of the hottest prospects in Europe last season, cutting inside and scoring those goals on his left foot, either driving at the near post or a finesse shot to the top left-hand side or in the far corner away from the keeper. But I do agree with you that at the end of the day, he is making errors. Maybe it's purely down to confidence. I think it's more down to the fact that I've just had a friend of mine pop up in the chat with that. Very good one, Leah. Thank you for reminding me of that. He was there when it happened. I think that when you're talking about Pepe and his confidence, I think that when he actually gels with the team a bit more, we will see a Pepe that is more not always laterally thinking, but he's driving at the opposition. He's getting caught. He's getting in behind. He will make those runs for Aubameyang and Lacazette, especially when Lacazette comes into the team as well, who's so much better at linking play up with the front three and those attacking midfielders. But we are going to have to give him time, and it is frustrating. And I am, as I said a couple of weeks ago, starting to get concerned. But at the same time, I need to be grounded enough to realise that Pepe does need time, 100%. John, let's move on to the main bulk of what we're here to talk about. The title, whilst it was a bit of a struggle to articulate it when we were talking at the beginning, in my funny 5 minutes, is sort of about how that we're sitting in third place. We're a point behind Manchester City. We are 6 ahead of Manchester United, 1 ahead of Chelsea, I think 4 ahead of Spurs, if I'm not wrong. We're okay. But there is this underlining tone of, I would say, a fair chunk of the fan base who would still quite happily see Emery chucked out tomorrow. And do you think this has been massively blown out of proportion, or do you think there is sort of a smokescreen being created by the underperformance of the teams around us?
I think that it's a little bit of both, and I don't want to say it's a massive over exaggeration or blown out of proportion, like you said, because I can understand. I mean, it's been a very frustrating time for Arsenal fans with the transition from Wenger, and this notion that we have this new manager and this excitement potentially, and then last season the kind of capitulation up until at the end of the league and in our European campaign. So there was already kind of a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and we said, all right, well, now he's got a transfer window. We've seen Pepe, we've seen some maneuvers in the transfer window that we haven't seen in a long time. It looked like we addressed some issues, so I think people were kind of not as willing to be as patient as maybe. I don't want to say they should, because everyone supports and has their own views, and I'm not here to say anyone's wrong, because I don't think that there's a right or wrong way to support the team. But I understand where they're coming from in certain regards. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think that right now, yes, it's a little difficult to determine what our actual tactics are. It seems to have something to do with our wing backs. It seems to have something to do with this overlap and kind of this press, which we don't see as much this season. But I think this kind of inability to kind of put our finger on what exactly is wrong and what we're doing wrong, that everyone kind of has a consensus on, is going to be a little bit of a schism between the fan base. And I think that when you compound that with things like Pepe taking a while to come in, that's only adding to the frustration, I think, that people are having in terms of not being patient enough going forward. So I think that it's a mixture of different things. I'm a little hesitant to say, like I said, that one person's right, one person's wrong. I tend to think that where we are right now is pretty good. And that's partially because of how bad it is for other people around us. When you look at Spurs and United, it could, I don't want to say it could be a lot worse, and that justifies where we are right now and specifically our performances, especially when we want to see a new identity coming forward. And that's kind of the big thing. It was less about the getting the points, which was kind of like in Wenger's term. We were getting the points. We were making top four, but we were kind of over how we were doing it, and we noticed that it wasn't going anywhere. So we said, okay, here's this new manager. Maybe he'll propel us in a direction that we can actually identify and say, look, this is how Arsenal are playing now. We wanted to see an identity. I don't think we've seen that right now, so it's a little bit frustrating. And the identity might very well be that we just don't have one, and that we're kind of this chameleon team that tries to play to our strengths, but it's just not seeming to work out right now. And I think it might be a mixture of just not having the correct personnel at the moment that available. Lacazette's out, Tierney, Bellerin. I don't want to say that these kind of players are going to come in and fix everything, but when you see these holes left in our midfield, for example, against Bournemouth, where Pepe's going against 4 different players and there's no number 10, no one operating the number 10 role, that's a little bit concerning. And you look at our shots on goal. 2 shots on goal versus Bournemouth. You look at how we struggle against Burnley, Watford, Aston Villa. I mean, these are concerning performances that we end up scrapping through, but you can only hold on to that for so long. Eventually, it's going to catch up to us, I think, and we really need to sort that out one way or another, whether it's with our returning players or just fixing it up tactically.
Yeah. I mean, let's play devil's advocate, Mike. After, say, what's it been? Not 18 months yet, but nearly 18 months. It's nearly been a year and a half since Emery took over. I cannot see a legitimate style of play in his game. I think that Emery has been brought in to be the transition guy between Arsene Wenger and the person that is meant to get this team to the next level, or back to where it once was, maybe. At what point do you stop that transition period, and do you have to stop it before we decline, or do you have to stop it before, or as the point that we're stagnating? At what point, if you even agree with the fact that Emery is a transitional manager, do you think we have to say that is it? Now we need to take on the guy that is going to take us forward.
Well, I think you might be right that he's a transition guy, hence why he was given a 2+ 1 year contract, Tom. That was a bit strange because most coaches don't get given a 2-year contract. It's normally 3, 4+. So that was suspicious. I think that there's a point where Aubameyang and Lacazette seem to be wavering or delaying on their contract talks. These 2 guys are 2 of the more important players of the team. If the problem is the coach, and I'm starting to wonder that myself, then that I think is a big factor, because I think a lot of people would say that they're more important than he is. So that's something that's in the back of my mind. I think that the fans are justified in the way that they feel, Tom, to be quite honest with you, because fans live off hope. And even though we're third, we're at that place where we look at what Emery did for us last year. And even though we had that 20-something game run, it was we stumbled our way through that, and then at the end of the season, I think that's just haunting people, and I think people just see what he's doing now and foresee that this is what's going to happen again. And quite honestly, he's been given one of the best squads that Arsenal's had in over 10 years, and he's got almost no holes in his squad, bar, like John said, the fullbacks coming back, which should make a difference, no doubt. But he has very little excuse, and so there's a lot going on that I think is wrapped up in the word confusion, because when I watch Arsenal, I feel confused, and I think the players look confused. And I think that as I wrote in my blog this morning, the other word that I've stumbled on is fortunate. I think Arsenal are fortunate to be third. They're fortunate that Man United, Spurs, Wolves, Watford, and whoever else was up there, Everton last year, they were doing quite well. All these teams, all of them, apart from Chelsea and Leicester, are blowing up. So we're fortunate there. And then when you watch the games, Tom, we're fortunate that we can't play more than one good half and that it's not capitalised on by the opponent. You know, if Callum Wilson puts that ball in the net, we're having a whole nother argument. So that's fortunate. So I think the fans feel that. They feel that Arsenal are just fortunate to be where they are right now and want it to be, want these victories that we are having to be a whole lot easier than they are, because it's stressful, isn't it? Watching Arsenal right now, even though we're third, it's a stressful experience. And I don't think that this squad justifies Arsenal, causing the fan base so much stress to get to where they're getting to.
No, I can't disagree. I think that the point is, and you hit the nail on the head by saying it's stressful watching it, and it's the way we're winning games is the issue. Is when we're winning them, it's not us absolutely obliterating an opposition side. And I'm not talking about the games in the cup, because it's a different animal, the Premier League to the Europa League and to Nottingham Forest, and actually taking the ball to the opposition and cutting them apart consistently, not getting these now and again nice bits of play, but consistent style of play where you know what you're going to get from the team. The players are clear and precise about what their jobs are and how they need to play the ball. That's what Arsenal was about. And now this period has sort of been, it's not, I want to say scuppered the whole idea of it, because I think the likes of Edu up top know the Arsenal way and will want to imprint that going forwards. Despite the same with like bringing Freddie Ljungberg up from the youth side as well. That sort of mix of experience of the old Arsenal with the incomings of new players, the incomings of possibly managers that are a bit alien to Arsenal might be a successful one. But I think with the manager that we've got currently, that mix just isn't quite working. We had a donation from Michael Hernandez, much appreciate that, and with a really, really good question for Jon. He says, do you believe our current board value performances and results equally? Thank you for the show, guys.
That's a great question. And I would tend to believe that it's about results right now. That I think that the key is getting into the Champions League spot, either through the league or winning Europa. I think that's why Emery was brought on here first and foremost. It's no coincidence that we brought on someone who won that many Europa Leagues in a row, knowing that's where we're going to be. We wanted someone who can navigate that competition. And I think we wanted someone that was going to take a pragmatic approach. I think there was a little question marks regarding the manager and whether he'd be able to implement some kind of Arsenal that we'd be able to identify with. But at the end of the day, from a purely backroom standpoint, there's no doubt in my mind that he was brought on here to get results and not to play pretty attractive football. I don't think we're there yet. I would like to be there. I don't see any reason why we can't get results, control games, play attractive football. I think both of those are not incongruous. You can have them at the same time. You know what I mean? So, and I think that's what a lot of frustrations coming about. That, yeah, sure, results are great. Yeah, performances are great. Why can't you have a good performance and get a result? And I don't know if that's just the approach that the manager takes in terms of pragmatism and how he approaches each match. I think a lot of it comes down to, and you want to say consistency and controlling games. It's a bit hard when you're switching it up after every match. And we know Emery with his USBs and showing the players reruns and tactics. So we kind of, and I mentioned this before, there needs to be a golden mean really between overanalyzing and switching it up too much, and not doing it enough, playing the same way. I think we got a little bit of the latter with Arsene Wenger, where, and I've said it before, he just kind of plays his own way. It doesn't matter who we're playing, we're just going to go out and play the same way every single week in and week out. And now on the other extreme, I think we have us right now, which is basically saying like, look, we're just going to play differently almost every week. We're going to switch up the midfield almost every week. And hopefully that changes, because I think some consistency will be important going forward. And for the board's perspective, it's ultimately, I think right now, at least with this manager, about getting into the Champions League. And I think those are the kind of questions that are going to be asked. So it does raise an interesting question. The reason why I think it's such a good question is because I think when you're looking at whether to judge this manager, if we accept the premise as true, that he was brought in here to get us into the Champions League and a pragmatic approach, using a pragmatic approach, that approach can only, I think, therefore be judged at the end of the season by its results. Does he get us into the Champions League? Yes or no? Forget right now about looking towards the future and whether he's the right manager to take us to the next level and all of that stuff. If we're really going to accept the fact that brought him in here to get us into the Champions League, that's how I think that's how I think the board is going to be judging him. We could judge him in a bunch of different ways. I don't want to watch ugly football for the most part, although it would be nice to get in the Champions League. But I think from the board perspective, they don't really care how we play. I think at the end of the day, they get the 3 points. We get in the Champions League. They get the Champions League money. We can spend more in this, and then reassess in the summer. Fine. But I think that's where we're at right now.
No, I think if you ask me, do I think we'll get it? Again, I'm sticking with my same answer I said before. I think that we might get it this year, but I think we will get it not based of us being, as you say, pragmatic and being, as what Emery likes to call, protagonists in our own success, but actually benefiting off the failures of the teams not picking up their own points competing.
100%. Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of both. I think Emery is going to be able to be successful in his pragmatic approach, in part because of the failures of the team surrounding us. And I think we're really lucked out in that regard. And I know a lot of people probably don't want to hear that, but because I want to be positive too. I want to see, like, look, we got some players coming back from injury. There are some promising things happening on the pitch, but I just can't shake this notion that if the other teams were not failing in an unprecedented, and you could argue whether Spurs' failures and Man United's have been unprecedented, but I think the extent to which they failed have been unprecedented. Were it not for those, we would not be, or Aubameyang basically having one of the seasons of any career striker has had, saving us on multiple occasions, we would not be in the position we're in right now. I guess that's all like, yeah, but if, my grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bicycle kind of a situation. There's a lot of hypotheticals that can happen. So I think we just really need to be happy we are where we are, but be cognizant of why we are where we are.
It's just going to be I think it's going to be a struggle to sort of get through this year. And I'm having my eyes more than I ever had before on the other teams, more than us, because they are so, not going to lie, it's rather entertaining. It really is, seeing the likes of Spurs.
7-2, it's great.
7-2 and then 3-0 to Brighton. That's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But I'd rather be, as Mike said, the team which are consistently being the team to actually win in the right way. And the last thing I want to talk about, Mike, on Emery, comes from the press conference. I'm just going to share it on the screen so you can see it. He was actually asked the question on if he'd like his team to win 1-0, just like Arsenal used to in the 90s. And he said that I know that, but our objective is to win. But also how we want to win is very important. Now, to you, does that just say to you, right, well, he knows what the issue is. He knows that people are aware of how we're playing, but he's going to be rather stubborn and still stick to his style? Or do you think we will start to see him try and imprint some sort of stylistic play about our game?
Well, I think that part of me wants to say that that's a bunch of nonsense, because the evidence on Saturday and Sundays is not that we're a team where we are lining up differently every week with a different strategy, which I think is causing confusion, and there's no automatic for the players, and it's making it difficult for the players. And I think that when we do go ahead, we tend to, box it in, and we're not just playing into basketball type football. So I don't see that at all. The only thing that I would say that would make me think that perhaps in the future we might end up doing this is that Cup Arsenal versus Premier League Arsenal is a totally different thing. And they're not only getting different results and causing less stress, but the approach is entirely different. It's front foot, isn't it? It's go again, keep pushing. And then I heard a whisper word the other day about that Emery's been told that to use the Europa League to find an identity and to play that way. Why to do that in the Europa League and then not realise you could do it also in the Premier League because it's working? I don't get that, and I don't know if this is true, but there's a very different Arsenal happening in cup competitions. So and back to what John was saying earlier about results, I think the club ultimately want Champions League. I think that's number one. Also, I do remember when Edu came in the summer, he talked more than any other one thing about an identity and a style and the Arsenal way and creating a style. And so I think that that's his drive. So I don't know who's got the biggest influence, Tom, at Arsenal, whether it's Sanyeli or it's Edu with Emery. But I think Edu's very interested in Arsenal not playing the way that they are right now in the Premier League.
Do you think that, because I'm really intrigued, because our structure is completely new and it's a very new process for us. Technical director, which is, as far as I'm aware, his title, Edu, does he have a say in a decision to sort of remove the manager or the head coach? Would he be involved in that decision, or is it purely on Raul Sanllehi and Vinay Ventukasam to make that choice?
Yeah, anyway. For me, it'll be all three of them. I don't know who gets final say or if there's like a voting process between the three of them, but I would imagine that all three of them have a say in transfers and in the coach. So I don't know if there's a final say guy, but I don't know how you could possibly leave Edu out of the loop.
Yeah,
John, do you think you agree? Yeah,
100% agree. I think that it's between them. There might be a situation where one of them kind of has like a veto, and I really do not know the specifics of that, but I would imagine it's a little bit more of a democracy.
Yeah, it's struggled sometimes to sort of work out if it is ultimately Raul Sanllehi who's running things, or is Josh Kroenke now the big one making the choices, or is he leaving the structure that we've now got in place to make those choices? We've got about 5 minutes left before we wrap things up. We've obviously got an international break ahead of us, which is always so nice to experience. Always so great to have an international break, especially at the times where you think that all of a sudden we're just getting into the groove. We picked up 6 points on the trot. Yes, they weren't the best performance in the world, but you want to keep the momentum going, and then this break hits us. John, what are you hoping to come out of this international? I know it's very obvious to say, obviously, no injuries, but I think there are some side things going on that we could see happen afterwards. What are you looking from this international break to happen after it?
Tierney, Bellerin, Holding, Lacazette. I think that the more time that they get off to be able to get train and be ready to go, I think one thing that's easing them in, they've got to be like ready to just get on this pitch and give it everything they got. They got to be like so antsy to get on with it. So I think that's going to be our biggest thing, because it's been this big question mark about how we're playing recently and our performances recently. This big question mark has been, what happens when these players come back? Is it going to make much of a difference? Is it going to be more of the same? I think we all have the sense, or most of us have the sense, that there's going to be a distinct tactical change and to what we're capable of, not only from an attacking perspective, but I think in a defensive perspective, once these players come back. It'll be interesting to see. And I think that's the biggest thing coming out of the international break, is that we know that Lacazette should be, touch wood, coming back, which is going to, I don't want to say revolutionize our attack, because he's been there. That's kind of extreme, but we're going to get to see a lot more from I think Pepe once Lacazette is back in this pitch, back on the pitch doing his thing and able to bring play in. So I can't wait to see more games with Aubameyang, Lacazette, and Pepe playing at the same time. As well as Bellerin, Tierney, and Holding, because I really want to see what that looks like. I think the biggest thing is, like you said, the obvious one. Just make sure we don't get any injuries. Aubameyang can't get injured. Please don't get injured, Aubameyang. Please. I mean, I mean, that's probably the worst possible thing that can happen to us. I think out of any player on the pitch right now, that's the most important one for us. And he's been playing a lot recently. 90 plus minutes, like almost every single Premier League match, if not every one that we've had recently. He came on even a little bit in Europa. So that's the key for me. If we can get those players returning and Aubameyang can stay fit, I think we have enough depth in certain areas of the pitch with the youngsters now doing their thing that will be good.
Mike, you have a question to answer, and it's not going to be an easy one. Your choice is when the first game back against Sheffield United away, after the international break, would you rather see Lacazette and Holding back in the starting lineup, or Bellerin and Tierney?
Oh boy. Well, I wouldn't have Bellerin. I don't think Bellerin looked ready. I would have Tierney. So I don't know if I can answer that wholly, but I would. So then I would go for Holding and Lacazette, because I don't think he's going to do it. I think he may play Lacazette. I don't think he's going to bring Holding back in until Socrates picks the ball up and throws it in the goal, so to speak. So, but I think Tierney is the one out of all those that John mentioned. I think Tierney's the one, having seen him twice now. Boy, that's another level right there. I've never seen a player. I think there was about 7 crosses he found his target in that Europa League game. That's just astonishing, isn't it? Really, and he was so quick. He was confident on the ball, beating players one-on-one. He's a whippersnapper in the tackle. I mean, he's a whole nother level to Kolasinac. So I think he's the one that's going to make the single biggest difference. And I think Lacazette will come in because we need more goal scorers, and Aubameyang will have to go on the left. Or the formation will switch to a 2 or something, but both of those will get on the field because we have to have goals on the field. And of course, when they played together, they've scored goals, both of them. And so you can't say that wouldn't work. But so I hope that's an answer.
No, it is, mate. Yeah, I think that I'm really looking forward to Tierney coming in and starting because I think his deliveries transform that left-hand side so much more. I think he provides a lot more defensive support and stability to Saka if he remains on that side. And if Aubameyang does come in and plays left with Lacazette in the middle, I think that he adds an extra dimension to that too. So for me, Tierney is the one I'm most excited about seeing to come into the side. But I actually agree with you. Bellerin looks against Standard Liège, just that little bit off the pace, that little bit like he clearly has been out for a long time, and maybe it will take a little bit more time. But I think that what he adds will be invaluable to us. Now, of course, the international break means that we don't have a game to put a prediction forward to. So I've got a couple of prediction questions for both of you to answer as we wrap up. John and Mike, you're going to get the same ones as well. The 2 questions I have is,
all right,
will Ozil play a Premier League game again this season?
Oh, man.
And will Emery last the entire season? There are your 2 questions, and you have a yes or no answer for both of them, please.
Oh, man, those are really tough. Yes.
Okay. And Mike?
What was the first question? I cut out on
the first question. The first question was, will Ozil play another Premier League game this season? And the second one, will Emery last the entire season?
No, Ozil will not. And Emery, yes.
Okay, interesting.
And with the caveat, by the way, I know that it's only yes or no with the first one, because that's the only one we disagreed on, that I think it's going to be as a sub, and it's going to be it's not going to be a big game. He's going to come in off the bench. I don't think we'll see him. I doubt we'll see him start a game, weirdly, but it's a long season. I imagine we'll see him at least once. Because look, even if we're going to sell him or move him on, we still need to at least show teams that he's able to play. So,
okay, I like this game. I've got another one. Well, I will slightly change the Emery one because you both said yes to that. You think he will. Mike, I'll start with you. Do Arsenal take the 1-year extended option in Emery's contract?
Do you want one word?
Yes. This is why it's difficult.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. John?
Nope.
Okay. We're going to carry on with this until we get bored.
No. Is it that? Do I think they will, or do I?
They will not. Do you think they will not? Sorry. Do you think they will take that contract offer?
I'm with Mike. I don't think they will.
Okay. 1-word answer. Who would be your pick to be the next manager, Mike?
Oh gosh, I can't do this in 1 word. If he speaks English
about this.
If he speaks English, I'm very interested in Marcelo Gallardo at River Plate.
Oh, see, I don't think anyone, maybe someone in our chat, that's a bit rude, but I don't think anyone in our chat may have even heard of that guy. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Let us know if you have. River Plate manager, what's his name? Gallardo.
Yeah.
Is that like when you say Gallardo, like a Lamborghini? I don't know if it's pronounced that's the same pronunciation.
Yeah,
is that the question? Is it how you pronounce Gallardo?
How you pronounce Gallardo, yeah. John, who would be your personal pick?
My heart says Freddie Ljungberg, but no. I'd like to see Allegri. I've been wanting Allegri for a long time, and I know people, whatever, they have their feelings about him, but I think that he'd be a very interesting one. Oh, sorry, Allegri. 1 word.
No, that's fine. I said that someone asked me in the chat. I actually said Allegri would be my choice because I just sort of, I don't think Emery's done the job that I thought he would do in terms of improving us defensively. And I don't know anything, if I speak honestly, about Gallardo at River Plate. I mean, Mike, is he someone that you think would improve us defensively?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
That's right. Do you think Gallardo would be a guy that would improve us defensively? I think we may have lost Mike very briefly.
Mike. I think Allegri will improve us to him. Let's put that.
I think Allegri definitely would. Definitely would.
I agree.
We're going to wrap things up there, people. I think that it's been an absolutely fantastic show. I've really got into sort of the nitty-gritty stuff about Emery. Honestly, I've been reading through the chat box, and tonight I think it has been one of the best chat boxes we've ever had. There's some fantastic questions, some really good comments from you guys. Really, really appreciate you coming in. If you've enjoyed the show and enjoyed the work that we've put in tonight, please give the show a like. Please subscribe if you are new around here with those notifications turned on. Thank you to my guest, Jon. A pleasure as always.
Always a pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me. I mean, to Mike. It was nice to meet you. Let me rephrase that. It's always a pleasure, Tom. It was great to be on with a new guest with Mike here.
No problem, mate. No problem. And
I'm
Mike,
thinking like 2 steps ahead.
I know you are. And Mike, if you can hear me, I'm hoping you can. Thank you ever so much for coming on. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
Thanks, Tom. It's been a pleasure.
There we go. We can't hear you, Mike, but we can see you. I am going to leave a link, by the way, to Mike's article, which is on the Gunners Town in the description once this is finished. So if you want to read Mike's article where he talks about all his reaction to the Bournemouth game, there will be a link for that in the description. So make sure you do go check that out. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. As always, thank you ever so much to the chat box. Please give it a like, subscribe if you're new. And notifications. If you're watching on playback and you're wondering, how do these guys get their comments popping up on the screen? Well, it's because they turn their notifications on and they get told when these shows go live so they can jump into our live chat. If you want to be that guy, make sure you turn those notifications on. And also, just a little quick plug, I put out that tweet, as I said at the start of the show. If you would like to be heard in real person on the podcast with the guys, you could have that opportunity, because I've tweeted out saying that we're looking for some people maybe to do a couple of shows throughout the year. Had quite a bit of interest. So read the tweet, read the thread, read the instructions, and you may be able to get involved yourself. Thank you ever so much for tuning in once again. I will see you again, probably most likely for some random tactical breakdown shows throughout the most exciting international break on earth. But until then, we will see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.